But if you take it freely, I will say that your choice is right, and though all the mighty elf friends of old, Hador and Hurin and Turin, and Baron himself were assembled together, your seat should be among them." "But you won't send him off alone surely, master?" cried Sam, unable to contain himself any longer, and jumping up from the corner where he had been quietly sitting on the floor. "No indeed," said Elrond, turning towards him with a smile. "You at least shall go with him. It is hardly possible to separate you from him, even when he is summoned to a secret council and you are not." Sam sat down, blushing and muttering. "A nice pickle we have landed ourselves in, Mr. Frodo," he said, shaking his head. "Greetings, friends. Yoistin here, and I hope you all are having a wonderful day, wherever you are in Middle-earth. Today we will be continuing our What's Different series, where we examine some of the major differences between the books and the movies, looking especially at big elements of Tolkien's novels that were not shown in Peter Jackson's films. If you haven't seen the previous 2 episodes in the series, I will link them in the description below and the cards above, so please check them out before watching this video. Now, just to reiterate, we are looking at major differences, so I won't be able to name all of the differences, but just some of the more important ones. With all of that said, thank you all for joining me today. Let's begin our tale. Last time we ended with Frodo's flight across the ford of Brunine, and him making it to Imladris. After he awoke in the House of Elrond, Gandalf sat beside Frodo, in both the movie and the book. In the movie, the two catch up, and there's a flashback to Gandalf being held by Saruman and rescued by Gwaihir the Wind Lord. This transitions into Frodo reuniting with his Hobbit friends and Bilbo, while Gandalf and Elrond discuss matters concerning men and the fate of the Ring, which eventually leads us to the arrival of the people that would join the Fellowship of the Ring. We see Boromir and Aragorn meet, as well as Aragorn and Arwen upon a bridge together, bringing us at last to the Council of Elrond. In the book, this is quite a bit different. Gandalf's narrative concerning Saruman would be told during the Council of Elrond, so after Frodo wakes up and he and Gandalf speak a bit, much is revealed about the Ringwraiths, the nature of Strider or Aragorn, Glorfindel and the Wraith World, and how the flood that saved Frodo on the Brunine was actually created by Elrond and Gandalf, for the water was of the power of Elrond, and the shape of the horses that the water took was a touch made by Gandalf. After this discussion, a feast was held, where we see Bilbo, Gloin, and others, and we hear of matters in Rovanian. We hear songs as well, particularly Bilbo's song about Eärendil the Mariner, father of Elrond, which had been made by Bilbo and Aragorn. A song of Elbereth is also sung, and for the first time we read a hint about the love between Aragorn and Arwen. Then Frodo and Bilbo head off to have some quiet conversation, and afterwards it was off to bed. Transitioning back to the movies, we have the Council of Elrond, where the ring is established as holy evil and we truly meet the members of the Fellowship. By the end of the scene, they become the Fellowship of the Ring, ending the first half of the movie. In the book, the Council of Elrond is way more impactful in terms of the overall narrative than it is in the movie. Now, the Council is a long one, but it is definitely very important to read. It pretty much catches the audience up on all of the major events that are necessary to know in going forward. We learn of the coming of Sauron's messenger to Erebor, Balin's expedition into Moria, the crafting of the Rings of Power in the Second Age, the War of the Last Alliance, the State of Gondor, Boromir's prophetic dream, Bilbo's renowned poem about Aragorn, the hunt for Gollum and Gollum's escape from Mirkwood, Gandalf's imprisonment by Saruman, and other histories as well. Finally, there comes the need for the Fellowship of the Ring to be formed. It's very interesting to note here that Bilbo at first thought the need to carry the ring to its end laid with him, but he and all others knew that he was not expected to finish this task, even though he was the one to find the One Ring in Gollum's cave. This really shows Bilbo's courageous and indomitable spirit. The sword Narsil is reforged into Anduril, the Flame of the West, for Aragorn to carry on his journey. Bilbo gives Frodo Sting and his mithril coat, just as he does in the movies, and the Fellowship goes on to depart Rivendell after some months, on December 25th of 3018 of the Third Age. No oaths are taken by any to remain with Frodo, but Frodo alone was bound to carry the ring, not deliver it to any enemy, and to only let others of the Fellowship or Council bear the ring at utmost need. The company and Bill the Pony set out southwards, heading into Eregion. Originally, the plan was to journey through the Redhorn Pass over Caradhras. On their way to the Misty Mountains, Crabine, servants of Saruman, sought to spy upon them, and they would have to hide. Eventually, however, it is likely that the Crabine saw them, as they would need to build fires to fend off the snows of the mountain. Gandalf thought of taking a different path, through Khazad-dûm, even though Aragorn advised against it. They continued on their path until they were defeated by the snows of Caradhras, even with the help of the Marivor drink from Rivendell, and the firewood they had gathered. The Gap of Rohan would bring the Fellowship too close to Isengard, and the path through South and Western Gondor, south of the White Mountains, as Boromir recommended, would actually take too long and would still harbor spies of the enemies. The only clear way was through Moria, and so the company would go to the gate of the Dwarven Place, and would make it to the doors of Durin after fending off an attack by wargs. Ultimately, the movie gives us a similar, but condensed version of these events. In the film, the Fellowship leaves Rivendell, and hides away from the Crabine but were spotted anyway. Then Saruman would influence the storms on Caradhras, and would defeat the Fellowship. But in the book, the storms of the mountain alone defeated them, seemingly without the help of the White Wizard. Anyway, the Fellowship eventually makes it to the edge of the mines. Aragorn has Sam let go of Bill, and the hobbits Merry and Pippin disturb the water by throwing rocks into it. Frodo helps Gandalf decipher the riddle of the doors of Durin, and the Fellowship enters Moria only to be attacked from behind by the Watcher in the Water. Then there's a bit of combat in the film, and the company makes it into the mines. They travel through, eventually coming to Balin's tomb, where Pippin's actions cause the goblins to attack. Frodo is stabbed by a troll, only to be saved by his mithril coat, and after having victory in the skirmish, the Fellowship runs to the bridge of Khazad-dûm. There's also a scene with the collapsing stairs that is only depicted in the movie for additional drama for our characters. Gandalf has his famous standoff with the Balrog, the bridge is broken, and the hero goes on to fight the demon of the ancient world in the depths of Moria, while the rest of the Fellowship makes it out of the mines. Looking at the book, many of the major beats are similar, but as with most things, the book has far greater detail with more culture being explored. Outside of Moria, Gandalf actually has Sam let Bill go, and puts words of guard and guidance on the pony, which likely go on to save the pony's life later, for we see him again in the Return of the King. Boromir actually begins to disturb the water with rocks, and Frodo tells him not to disturb the water, for he fears it. The doors are eventually opened and the Watcher attacks, forcing the Fellowship inside the mines. They would come to a chamber that had multiple paths connected to it, and the company would stay in the guardhouse that watched the chamber, and inside of this guardhouse was a well. Pippin would go on to toss a stone down the well, likely alerting all of the orcs in Moria of their presence. The Fellowship would then go on to find the city of Dwarodelf, and Gimli would sing the Song of Durin. I'll go ahead and link some of my favorite versions of that song in the description below, as it's quite a beautiful poem. The Fellowship went into the Chamber of Mizarbul and found Balin's tomb and the Book of Mizarbul, which Gimli would keep in his possession to hopefully return it to Dane Ironfoot someday. Thus, the Battle of the Chamber of Mizarbul took place, and an orc chieftain would stab Frodo, who would be saved by his mithril coat. Aragorn would then defeat the chieftain with Andúril. The Fellowship would fly from that place towards the bridge of Khazad-dûm, and Gandalf would hold the door with a ward, which would be broken by Durin's Bane, who had found his way to meet the company. The Fellowship would make their way to the bridge, and finally it would be revealed to them that Durin's Bane was a Balrog of Morgoth, from the early ages of the world, which before this was unknown to the Free Peoples. The Fellowship would go over the bridge, and Gandalf alone would stand against the Balrog. Before long, however, the valiant men Aragorn and Boromir would cry out Elendil and Gondor respectively, for they were about to charge against the Balrog and stand with Gandalf. I love this little detail, for Aragorn and Boromir showed incredible courage and valor in this moment. But before his friends could aid him, Gandalf smote the bridge and the Balrog fell, bringing Gandalf to the brink, who would go on to fall after the demon. Aragorn and Boromir ran back across as more of the bridge collapsed, and Aragorn would go on to lead the Fellowship after this point. They left the mines and dread behind them, with much sorrow at the loss of Gandalf the Grey. Aragorn would fell an orc captain that was just beyond the East Gate, and the other orcs in his company would flee. The Fellowship would go out of bowshot of the mines, coming into the Dimrill Dale. That feels like a great point to end this episode of What's Different, and I think it should take us only one more episode to get through the Fellowship of the Ring. I love both the movie and the book, and this series is a great way to explore both of them. I hope you guys think so as well. From this tale, we see the virtue of standing together through harsh environments and terrible foes alongside our friends. Sometimes fellowship and courage will make all the difference between victory and defeat. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button and share this with a friend. What are your thoughts about the differences between the book and the movie as they are depicted in this section? Let me know in the comments below. This part of the book is full of detail and action, and it really sets the tone for the rest of the Fellowship of the Ring story. Please feel free to let me know any thoughts, comments, corrections, or questions that you may have in the comments below. Also, please check out our music channel, Facebook, Twitter, merch, and Patreon for our podcast and Discord in the description below. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell button to join the Men of the West and all of the Free Peoples today. I'll see you all again next week with an epic character history on Rivendell, the father of Elrond and Elros. As always, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one, my great friends.